Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Gotham, Supergirl, and Lucifer. Starting off with Gotham, a very interesting episode. I kind of picked this up at the end of the last episode, the whole Penguin having feelings for Enigma thing. It just seemed like that was kind of what I was getting the vibe from. I was like, nah, maybe I'm reading too much in that. And I ended up seeing something kind of bringing it up. Where I was like, oh, so I wasn't paying attention. I was like, is that really where they're going? And it's like, yeah. Interestingly enough, that is. It's kind of, not that it matters anyway. I've never actually known Penguin's sexual orientation anyway. I don't think I've ever seen him have a significant other in anything I've ever seen pop up. I'm saying that because some people are like, oh, how can you make Penguin gay? It's like, oh, he's always had blah 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 significant other. So I'm saying, because I'm not coming from that mindset, I'm kind of like, who cares? I feel like even if that was the case, I'd be like, who cares? I just find it fascinating that not only is he's in love with who has easily become his best friend now, not just someone who's been his best friend the entire time. And, someone closest confidant is now the person he's in love with. Why? Just because that always tends up being the situation. It's like you always end up falling in love with your best friend. Not always, but typically that's how the cliche goes. It's like, oh, first you're best friends and then you end up becoming, close. But he's like, he can't even bring himself to tell him how he feels and everything. And I was just like, wow, you never seen Penguin so flustered trying to tell someone how he really feels. He's never actually had anyone special in his life like that, so... But Enigma has, which kind of brought up the question, would he, return those feelings to Penguin anyway? I don't know. Maybe, he could end up being bi. The whole Kristen thing is kind of like, okay, obviously, he's not. I don't know. You never know. The heart is not just so straightforward. It can change, it's like, depending on the person, it's like, hey, if you want to get all technical about sexuality, I like to kind of think, it's like your heart goes where your heart goes. Who gives a shit, Why worry about labels? But it's like, nope, there's a new person in his life, someone that looks a lot like Kristen. And not only that, she likes riddles too. So it's like, come on, perfect match made in heaven and whatnot. And it's like, that in itself is bringing up an interesting storyline, because it's like, yo, Penguin seems like the type, is the type to get pissed when he doesn't get what he wants, and he finds out it's like, oh, Enigma's got a new woman in his life. Who is this? I kind of imagine him saying like, oh, who is this quote unquote hussy trying to get dibs on my man type of thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how he reacts when he finds out that maybe this in itself is going to lead to a storyline that kind of brings a divide between it, because it's like they've come together as kind of like the perfect storm, but it's like eventually maybe that's going to eventually lead to them falling up because Penguin tries to do stuff to get rid of this new lady in his life, and that maybe Ed finds out and then tries to turns on Penguin. Well, it'd be very interesting if you end up finding out the fact is that she is like turning Ed against Penguin. She's just kind of slowly turning Ed more towards her and being like, don't worry, Ed is mine, I love him, I'm better for him than you are, or something like that. It could kind of turn into a love triangle situation, where I think would be fascinating, which is kind of interesting when you look at the storyline of today's episode, dealing with kind of the love triangle of Lee, Valerie, and Jim. I love the fact is that, because Valerie's just kind of asking, so that I'm going to have a sit down with Lee, and it's like, okay, our situation and how awkward that be, but it's like, she's still asking for it. She's kind of like, oh, I get it, you still have feelings for her and whatnot. It's just kind of like, it's not like that. And she just keeps pushing it. She's like, when are you going to give up this whole PI thing too? And he's like, what do you mean? She's like, well, basically the two jobs you've had, you kind of sucked at both of them. First job was get Alice, she's dead, and then second job was trying to track down Ivy. You never found her, so it's kind of like, She's like, he's like, I like being a PI. She's like, of course you do. You get to drink all day and have sex with me. I was like, wow, nice. She's very confident. I would give her that. It's just like, I like Valerie a lot just because of her spunk. She's very blunt, what she wants, especially when her and Lee were caught later on. And they're in the situation they're in, and she's still aiming for a job. She's like, okay, Lee's like, I don't know what's up with you. I don't know whether it's because this is your way of compensating because you're scared or whatever, or whether you legitimately this much dedicated to your body. Your job, your body. What the hell am I talking about? To your job. And she's like, oh. So about Alice's blood, she's like, "Oh God, you and Jim are made for each other." Just like, thank you. It's not a compliment, you know. Both being kind of workaholics and stuff like that. But she did bring up interesting questions. You know, she's constant like Lee's constantly keeps saying that like Mario is the reason why she came back to town. It's like, because, you know, Vicky keeps bringing up, it's like, you literally could have gone anywhere, but you came back to Gotham. Not only did you come back to Gotham, you came back to the GCPD. You could have just found a job anywhere else. Why back here, knowing that you would eventually cross paths with Jim? Maybe on some level she did. I mean, the way Jervis kind of got inside of her head is like, oh, you look into her eyes, she still has a love for you, Gordon. So, I mean, that was kind of obvious. It's just, she's trying to move on, but, you know, I feel like, you know, no, like I said, the heart is a fickle bitch. It's like, even when you try to move on, there's always going to be a part of you that's still longing from the past, because it's like, after everything they've been through, what they could have had, what they no longer have, it's just the heart, you know, they never really got to say their goodbyes with their situation, so I guess their hearts are still longing for each other in that regard. I was kind of surprised with the whole situation. Obviously, they were going to, like, it's going to be like, okay, you have to choose. Tell me which one to shoot. Okay, like, he's like making it interesting, and it's like, it's shoot Lee. I was like, wow. Like, you know, the whole point is kind of make you think, like, oh, obviously he's going to choose, like, Lee, like, as, like, oh, shoot Valerie and save Lee. But the fact is he said Lee and then shot Valerie, and I'm like, I'm surprised by that. Because obviously he is conflicted because he does like Valerie, but at the same time, his heart is still conflicted with Lee. I like what Jervis said best. It's like, you two are both halves of Jim Gordon's heart. So, I mean, Jim tried to explain it later on. He's like, Lee, about what I said before. She's like, Jim, not right now. Now, there's different sides. The pessimist in me is kind of like, you said that because you don't want to admit how you really feel about Lee. It's your way of trying to subconsciously, like, remove that situation. Or, you know, but there's an optimistic side of me that's like, maybe you legitimately feel that way about Valerie. I kind of hope that's the case, because I don't want it to be a situation where it's just like, where Valerie or Mario walk away with a broken heart. I mean, considering he's Falcone's son, I just feel like that's going to be a disaster, especially considering the fact this Falcone was like, already brought up the fact it's like, how is your heart? Like, I feel like you have a conflicted heart, and it's like, a conflicted heart is a very dangerous thing. It's a very bad thing. You know, this is my son's heart we're talking about, and I don't want his heart to get broken. So it's kind of like, it leads you. It's a very interesting episode, because it's like, the Mad Hatter is a very interesting villain doing the things he does in this episode. At first, the whole thing with the boy and the bride and groom, and that just sucked. It's like, Jim, choose someone. And then when he chooses the boy, it's like, oh, you know, trying to break it down psychologically, like, oh, I understand why you did it. I mean, the last time you dealt with a woman in a wedding dress, you know, it was Barbara holding a gun against him, threatening to kill him and Lee. So it's kind of like, hey, you know, maybe he kind of frowns upon the whole marriage situation, especially because he was kind of like, that step forward in some cases, like, for instance, you look at, like, you know, eventually down the road, he would have gotten that way to that point with Lee, and definitely was almost there with Barbara. So, you know, psychologically, it's like, marriage is kind of like frowned, you know, might be a little bit of a sore spot in his head. But you could also look at it psychologically why he saved the kid is because it's like, he wasn't there when his own, you know, situation with Lee happened where they lost their child. So, subconsciously trying to make up for that by saving another kid's life. That's how I'm looking at it. They never really brought that up, but that's how I viewed that. And then there's a whole situation where he's giving him those two guys, each one kind of representing Lee and one representing Valerie. They're like, oh, here's an anchor, a news journalist, and here's a doctor or whatever. And it's like, oh, both of them represent kind of Lee and Valerie. And it's like, oh, shoot one to save the other one. And Gordon refused, and then he killed them both, because it's like, hey, you don't realize that not making a choice is a choice, and there are consequences for making a choice, and even when you don't make a choice, not making a choice is a choice. So, like, it's very interesting, because for him, he is purely motivated by, obviously, revenge, but a big part of him, his whole thing is control. Like, when the whole time, like, Gordon kept hanging up the phone on him, that just shows you just how desperate he is for control, because it's like, once control kind of gets out of his hands, he gets frustrated. He doesn't like losing control. I mean, that's his whole shtick, as like controlling people's mind, controlling other people, because I guess in some way, some shape or form, maybe when he was younger, he didn't have control, and so now he's trying to compensate by having control over other people, making them do what he wants. that whole Alice storyline, like the fact is, last episode we saw him have that girl dress up like Alice and then killed her. It's like kind of reliving that twisted fantasy of wanting his sister, but it's like you're dead, so I can never have you back type of thing. Like, I'm wondering when we kind of see, like, because I brought that up, I was like, oh, are we going to kind of keep seeing that kind of pop up throughout the season or something? I mean, he did get away at the end of the episode, so I'm wondering maybe that would be something that's kind of his trademark, kind of killing women that kind of look like his sister, or at the very least, women that kind of represent his sister. So, it's actually a very contained episode because it was all about the Mad Hatter and Jim. It wasn't like, oh, here's something about, Bruce and stuff like that. It was like, no, it's all about centered around the Mad Hatter and Jim. Well, granted, it's spaced out a little bit. I mean, because the GCPD kind of connects to Jim and whatnot, with Barnes kind of going all like Hulk on that chair, like squishing, like crushing it with his hands, and his eyes kind of morphing out like that. So it's like, it seems like he's got control of it. Obviously, it kicks in when his anger gets the best of him, but it doesn't completely turn him like psychotic like anyone else would. I get the feeling maybe that's going to play a big part in. Now I'm thinking about it, I'm a complete and utter idiot. I forgot that I just literally mentioned it earlier. The whole Penguin and Nigma storyline too. I completely forgot about it. So there was other side stories. It's not that rare. I mean, rare that you don't see like Bruce or some Bruce side of things. It's like, no, you would think him being kind of like Batman and everything, he'd be in every episode, but it's like, they probably just don't have stories every episode to kind of integrate him into, like, if they, because they couldn't in some shape or form be like, oh, here's something, let's squeeze Bruce in for like one scene or something. It's like, no, they're not obligated to do that. It's like, unless they need him to tell a story, they're not just going to casually throw him in there. But because I'm very curious to get back to finding out like what's going to happen between him and Selena after that confusing kiss last episode. But luckily Jim almost got into Jervis's head. I'm going to get back to that real quickly. I think the point I was thinking was going to make is I wonder how Alice's blood is going to play out this season. I'll focus on that because it's like the last time we saw Jervis had collected like a whole bunch of like from her. So I'm curious about like what that means. Like will we kind of see a lot of people going a little nuts with that? I mean, like, how does that work in combination with what the Mad Hatter does? Like, could he use that on someone and then control their mind? Or is it like when they're touched by Alice's blood? Because it affects everyone differently. As we could see, like the 10 of the landlord that we got to first experience her power being used on, kind of went mad and tried to kill Jim and kind of, just went psycho. But it's like Barnes hasn't. He's kind of remained the same. Like I said, superhuman strength and whatnot, but still. So I'm curious, is that going to be like a big part of the city? Like, I'm curious, because like I've already said before, I feel like he's being set up as kind of like the main overarching villain, at the very least one of them. Whole Mad City thing, but I mean, that could also be connected with the fact that you have all those experiments running around too. The fact this Gotham kind of went upside down this season because it's like, yo, Penguin's mayor and his chief of staff is the Riddler. So, but the thing I was getting to is the fact is that Jim was almost able to get into Jervis's head, kind of saying all the stuff I brought up before. It's like, your sister would rather die than be with you. I saw the look on her face. She had a smile on her face, almost getting to me. It's like, oh, you're trying to confuse me. It's like, that is like, it's kind of interesting. His greatest strength, control, is also his greatest weakness. And I guess that's kind of how he, maybe that's his way of, like I brought up before, compensating, lack of control. Because, I mean, he did, as like, Gordon kind of brought up his, like, him and his sister, that whole situation. He wanted to control her, it's because he didn't get what he wanted. And so the best way for him, I guess, was to control people. So very, like, I just think he's a very fascinating villain. Like, if you want to get all like psychological about it, he's fascinating in that regard, but also the way he does things, because it's kind of like anybody can be used as a weapon against you, especially when he dives so deeply into your head and your heart. I mean, especially because he got all that information from Barbara, and it's like, dude, come on. And even Barbara's talking about, yeah, I'm telling him all about the fact is that you're actually secretly still in love with me. It's just like, wow, why would you? I don't know, like, Barbara's just playing crazy, and she's not. It's weird when you think about it, because it's like she started off so normal back in season 1, and then like around season 2 she just went nuts. Was that even season 2? The whole like killing her parents thing, or was that season 1? Well, it was season 2, wasn't it? Like the first half of season 2. just went nuts. I mean, basically, she lost her mind around the time Jim left her, just because he got caught up in everything. But still, it's crazy to see how much she's changed. I'm very curious to see what they do with her, because it just seems like she's just kind of there being like, where's her story going to take her is what I'm trying to say. Like, I'm very curious about that. And I'm such a douchebag, I haven't even mentioned it yet. I hope Valerie's okay. I mean, you could argue it's kind of like, well, she's safe. They're not going to kill Valerie Vale, because it's like, hey, she's got to be around to have her daughter Vicky at some point. So, that's how I'm chalking that up. Which is one of those other things that's kind of like, maybe Jim doesn't end up with her because of that fact. But then again, it's like, but he has Barbara. His wife Barbara is crazy. Well, his ex Barbara. I don't know why I refer to it. His ex Barbara is crazy. But it's like, how will he ever have Batgirl, Barbara Gordon, if he has an ex like that in this universe? So it's kind of like, once again, its own continuity. It's doing its own thing. It takes what you already know about Batman, kind of switches it up a little bit, does its own thing with it, which, as we know, not a lot of people appreciate in different things. Like, for example, the Killing Joke. It's different approach. A lot of people didn't appreciate it. They're like, whoa, what's up with this Batman and Barbara relationship? That's weird. It's always been like a father kind of daughter, like a master and mentor relationship. Sure, but it's never been like that. Why are you, that's weird. That's disgusting. Very interested to see where we go next week. And now moving on to this week's episode of Supergirl. Very interesting storyline where we have basically the president showing up, which you have Kara being so giddy about. But essentially the president is trying to put him forth like an act to kind of make it so that aliens don't have to hide out anymore. They can be out in the open, and they basically can get citizenship here in the U.S. And you have very different perspectives. You have Alex's perspective, you have John's perspective, and you have Kara. Kara being the most positive for it, being like, yeah, be out in the open. John being like, yeah, that's fine and dandy for you and me. You look pretty human. Well, not pretty human. You look very human. I can make myself look pretty human, but the fact of the matter is, not every alien is fortunate as us, because, they look very different, and we know how humans react. They don't like things that are different. They don't handle it well. And he said, I'm saying that as an alien, as well as having disguised myself as a black male for 15 years. So, and on top of that, Alex being like, let's not forget, not all aliens are good. She's like, I can literally count on one hand the number of good aliens that I know. Which in its sense, like, that's what's so good about this episode. It's just kind of like how everything is connected. You take Kara's like super positivity about like, aliens, accepting them and everything, and you combine that with the fact that she's doing a story on Lena Luthor, who is actually making a device to be able to tell whether people are human or alien. And Kara's like, wait, what? Why would you do that? It's like, the U.S. is all about freedom, and it's like, people should be able to come here and, be free to do what they want. And Lena's like, there's no denying that. They have the right to come here and have a happy life, but people also have the freedom to know who they are, like who's an alien, who's not. But with a situation like that, I mean, in either side, like, there is the good and the bad. I mean, with a situation like revealing your identity to people, it's like, people will be like, they'll stick away from you. They'll demonize you. It'd be hard to live a normal life. And I get that's, that could also be, that could easily be where that goes. And that's kind of more what John was kind of saying. But then you take the other side of it, like, let them stay, but kind of stay hidden. Well, that also causes a problem, too, because then a lot of people start getting paranoid. It's like, who's an alien, who's a not? And that starts making people act a little irrational. And they're like, every little situation, you're acting a little funny. You're acting weird. You're so pro-alien. You must be an alien yourself. And it's like, that can turn the tides. But what I really like the most about Kara's story this episode is showing just how it kind of coincides with report that basically Snapper had working on with the whole Lena situation is her bias. That, like, at first he didn't like her report because I was like, hey, you're being very biased. The whole point of not being a reporter is it's just deliver the facts, not add your own opinion to it, which is kind of like, well, I mean, no matter where you go, I feel like every news outlet is going to be a little biased. It's just kind of human nature to be a little biased. But she was like heavily biased. It's like, you're in here putting your like pro-alien propaganda in this, and which isn't like it's a bad thing to have your opinion, but it's like, no, I didn't ask for your opinion, I asked for the fact in the story. And then she ended up changing up a little bit because she ended up coming across that what we ended up learning his name is Montel. He's a Daxam, and the moment Kara found that out, she's like the moment Wynn revealed that he's a Daxam, it's like she went after him, like turned into Supergirl, kicked his ass, like not holding any punches, and beat him down. And because in her mind, because we learned a little bit like about Daxam's and Krypton, which I kind of already knew a little bit. Once again, like I brought that up like in a previous episode, like I know what he was because source of it nerd kind of explained, which I joking was talking about like spoiling things. It's like no, because I've never known that. I don't think I've watched anything Superman related where that's ever come up before. And then like apparently their physiology is very similar to Kryptonians. I have to find that fascinating. So that's why she was so quick to be like, yo, it's obviously him because he has Kryptonian powers and he escaped and everything. But, the whole situation is interesting because it's like Kara is blaming everyone else, being like, oh, how can you be so it's like, oh, but the fact is Lena's so anti-alien. She's got this very polarizing opinion that kind of contradicts mine. It goes against mine. But at the same time, you kind of bring out your own opinion, your own assumptions, your own judgments to this guy that you don't know. And it's not based on your own experience. It's based on your preconceived notions of him, because it's like your two planets, like we're at war with each other. And it's a very interesting thing because obviously it reflects human history too, because it's like history is different depending on who you ask. You ask the losers, well, the history books aren't written by the losers, it's written by the winners. So there's a very different perspective there. And it's the same thing with their situation. It's like, she was talking about, Krypton was like, we're a democracy. And then you had these like barbarian Daxonites who were like had a monarchy, and they were just so barbaric and stuff, and they attacked us first. But then you had Montel being like, you guys attacked us first. And Kara's like, wait, what? No, we didn't. So like I said, it's always a different perspective, because it's like, they say it was kind of a situation that kind of went back and forth for like 100 years, and it was kind of a stalemate. I'm curious, because Kara never really went into detail as to whether or not that continued the entire time, like while she was on Krypton, and was it still ongoing in her lifespan or not? Because if not, she was basing all that on history books. And it's like history teaches us some things, but you never get the full story. You never get the full perspective. Because that's the thing. Because of it being a perspective situation, you will never get the full story, because everyone will see certain things a different way. Even if you add in you might be if you add in a third neutral party, they can be like, no, things work like this, and that. And it's like, the Krypton didn't attack first, and Daxam didn't attack first. It was just a mutual meeting ground that things just kind of fell apart, So that was just kind of interesting to me that we saw that. I mean, we saw that side of Kara, and she even kind of wrote it in her report about Lena being like, oh yeah, there are some dangerous aliens. Like, so it was just kind of interesting to see her so very closed-minded in a sense, which is kind of like, to me, that's very interesting, because that same thing can be said about you. Like, that's what Cadmus's whole thing is about. The fact is, you're aliens, you're not there, you're there, you're not good guys, you're not heroes. They don't really know you, and it's just like Montel, you don't really know him, you just base it all preconceived because of the fact is of who he was. Same thing with Cadmus. They don't really know you as a Kryptonian, but they just assume you're a bad person because you're an alien and you're here on their planet, on our planet, I should really say. So it was just overall very fascinating. And I really like the fact is, like Maggie, like a very interesting character. She's very smart too, very sassy, just kind of doesn't take any bullshit. Also, since because I'm thinking about Alex, because I like their dynamic. It's like, I hope we get to see them kind of buddy up like more in the future. Because I'd like her to because Alex doesn't have like a perpetual partner to kind of team up in the field with. You could argue Kara, yeah, but it's like Maggie would add a different perspective, because it kind of put in a different perspective for Alex too, because for Alex, she'd always been saying she had always had to hide away aliens. It's because both the good and the bad, hide away bad aliens, but this episode ended up teaching her, really opened her mind that not all aliens are bad. And, like Maggie had a very different perspective because she's actually trying to protect. She kind of like John has a very different perspective. She's like, she feels like she has more in common with aliens than she does normal people, because it's like people will turn you away just because your ethnicity, your sexual orientation, it kind of alienates you. So it's like she knows what that's about. So that's why she latches on to the aliens a little bit more, find them a little more reliable than humans. But having that little bar and everything, dive bar that she goes to and everything is where she kind of gathers information. I am curious, because I was just talking about it in Gotham, I was just curious, like, is that just going to be like a friendship, or could that possibly be more? I don't know that. If they decide to go that route, it'd be interesting, because Alex hasn't had. Because I always thought something was going to happen between her and Matt Clore, who surprisingly hasn't shown up yet. I keep saying that stuff, but it's like, it's super early in the season. This is only the 3rd episode, so it's kind of like, it's a little weird for me to be jumping, like, because all the superhero shows are like 20 some episodes, just like last season of this was. So it's like, we're literally like only 3 episodes into like a 22 or 23 episode like season. So it's like, okay, slow the hell down. It also brings up the perspective. I'm curious on what Clark's position on this is, like finding out that this guy is like a Daxonite. Would that change his perspective? Like, would he have the same feelings that Kara does? I don't think he actually would, though. I forgot. Clark doesn't have memories of Krypton like that. She only knows about Krypton because she lived on it for, a good many years. So she probably learned and studied, and, they had school lessons about Daxon. So it's kind of like, obviously that's where that kind of bias comes from. So another side of the story is we kind of see Jimmy kind of like stepping into the role and whatnot. Interestingly enough, when he first is like first kind of his first day at the job, he's about to dish out orders, and then you have Snapper telling him, "Yo, you do this." It's like, no, that's not how you should do this. Cat, oh, you're trying to do things like Cat. I guess you're just her shadow, aren't you? You're just trying to be her copycat, aren't you? He's just like issuing out orders and kind of shutting Jimmy down. But I think it's kind of interesting how Kara, it's kind of like how Kat was to Kara. Kara's kind of like that to Jimmy, because she's like, no, don't try to do like Miss Grant. Do you, be you. She put you in this position not to be like her. She put you in this position because she knew that you can do the job as you. And it was just kind of inspiring. And it was like, holy crap, did she kind of turn into Kat for you? That was kind of cool. So it's going to be interesting to see how that dynamic works now too. It's like, interestingly enough, we don't have that weird awkwardness of, personally, I didn't have a problem with the whole Jimmy and Kara thing, but I guess it's kind of like, they were joking. Someone was joking, being like, I guess CW just kind of like was like, yeah, we're just scrubbing up a lot of that stuff that happened on CBS. Let's scrub some of that out. Like, let's put our own and try to fix it to a certain extent. Let's start by getting rid of that. So I don't know. It's gonna be interesting. Because it's, I want to see if she ends up becoming that for Jimmy. It's like Jimmy needs help and she's there for him in that regard. Because like I said, just bringing up that just not weird and awkward at all. As you would think in a situation they would be in that would be the case. Last episode it wasn't. Just kind of like, oh, you got a new job. Congratulations. So I don't know. Which also brings up the question, like, it could legitimately end up being her and Montel end up together. Which would be interesting, especially coming from the different backgrounds that they do, like coming from 2 planets that hate each other. But he's the only other person that she really knows that has the powers that she has. Like, she can always connect with Clark because he's the only other person like her. Well, it's like, well, here's another person, but he's not family. Here's another guy that's not family that's like me. So makes you a little less, kind of fills that void inside of her of being like a little alone, because at least like she'll have him in the city. He's not going anywhere anytime soon because apparently his planet's still there, but apparently got turned into a wasteland. I was actually surprised he didn't start blaming Kara, because it's like, yeah, the only reason why my planet is in that situation is because your planet blew up, so screw your people. I'm surprised he didn't turn into a situation like that, but we don't know. It might like do that in the future, but I'm very curious to see what they do with him, like what role he plays in this. Will Kara kind of try to teach him to be a hero too or not? 2 notes. One, I really like the fact is that two things. One, when Kara was on fire and she spun around to kind of get rid of the fire on her suit. I don't know what that seemed familiar from something. I don't know what. I don't know whether it's a Superman cartoon or something. That seemed familiar somewhere, and I just can't place it. Like it seems something superhero related. I don't know. Like definitely when she's fighting like that fire alien girl and lady. I'm just never mind. I'm not even about to go there. Ended up like sucking up all the oxygen by spinning around her, like flying around her super fast. Die out her flames by sucking out all the oxygen. That kind of seemed like a Flash move to me, like to take down someone that has firepower. That just seemed like a real Flash move to me. Or maybe it's kind of maybe a Flash and Superman / Supergirl power. I mean thing that they would do. I don't know. It worked either way. It was pretty cool. And I like the fact that Maggie was the one that kind of dealt the final blow. And she was like, man, you guys are fun. The fact that she was having fun, it just kind of shows you how wild and crazy Maggie. That's what I'm hoping we get to see her a lot more. Like, kind of like, I'd probably kind of want it to be a situation where it's like, she stays a detective. I don't want her to kind of work at the DEO. I want her kind of be off from doing her own thing, kind of working her own leads and stuff like that. Also, side note, has that badge thing always been a thing? I don't remember that coming up in season 1. There's probably someone being like, oh yeah, it totally came up. I don't remember that. But the fact is she had the badge behind her back and it's like, oh yeah, it says DEO and it shifts. And she's like, oh, I'm Secret Service. I'm like, wow, how Doctor Who of you. I mean, that was like Doctor Who's like the first thing I ever saw with that. I forgot what the name of it is. It's basically like paper that makes, it goes into someone's mind and makes them see what they would be most, appropriate for them to see. It's like, oh yeah, this paper says, even though it's in blank and invisible, it says that I'm an FBI agent. So that type of situation. So I was like, is that new or has that always been there? That was kind of pretty cool. And final note, I want to talk about, there was the actress in the bar, like the moment she first showed up, I was like, I recognize that actress. I was like, that's weird. I was like, are they going to do something with her? Because she's like, I don't know if she's a big time actress, but she's an actress I've seen in some stuff, and I'm like, she's too specific for her not to have. It's like, oh, she's just there to give Alex a tip. I was like, okay. I was like, oh yeah, I saw you in some episodes of Grimm last season. That's cool. And then John walks in as himself because he decides to go to that bar, so he doesn't have to hide who he is. And then he kind of transformed and everything. And then she started acting weird. He's like, oh, would you prefer if I went to uniform? She's like, no. I was like, she's acting weird. He's like, do I know you? I was like, no, don't tell me. Is this going where I'm going? And then she transformed into like, she's Miss Martian. I was about to say Mrs. Martian. Miss Martian. And I flipped out. I was like, dude, that's so cool. Thank you, Young Justice. Because if it wasn't for Young Justice, I wouldn't have known that. I wouldn't have been expecting that to happen. I was like, that's so cool. I was like, Miss Martian, that is so awesome, dude. There's also another part of me that's like, to kind of feel that Young Justice void in my heart. We could in some shape or form, bring about, Superboy. What if Montel kind of feels the void of Superboy? What if he kind of plays that role? That'd be kind of cool to see him and Miss Martian kind of get together. It'd be like Young Justice brought to life to a certain extent. I'm getting a little too giddy about that. That was just so cool. I am curious to know, are they going to have the same relationship like they did in Young Justice? Because that's kind of the only thing I've ever seen Miss Martian. And I didn't really know her prior to me watching Young Justice a couple years ago. But, because in the show, I think in the show, the relationship is their uncle and niece, yes. But I can't remember whether it's like, they have a very complicated, everyone's kind of related on Mars. So it's kind of like, the best thing we can do is refer to ourselves as uncle and niece. Or whether the fact is that they were biological uncle and niece. But the thing is, I don't know, because the fact is we don't know about John's outside family. We know about his immediate family, wife, and children, but we don't know about outside family. So she could be it could be a biological thing of like, yeah, she biologically is his niece. And maybe that's the same thing that happened on Young Justice too, but I vaguely remember them saying like it was a little bit complicated. So basically, the simplest thing to do was be like, the closest thing I could say is like he's like my uncle and I'm like his niece. So I'm curious to see if they kind of have that kind of relationship, especially because Johnson, you look so familiar to me, and it's just that is just the coolest thing, dude. I'm super excited about it. It's like we get another Martian, dude. I am the last daughter of Mars. Oh, dude. Oh, that's so awesome. Just, dude, there's so many lasts. Clark is the last son of Krypton. Kara is the last daughter of Krypton. Last son of Mars. Last daughter of Mars. And now we have, like, the last son of Daxam. Oh, God, it's so cool. I want that to be the case. I want that to kind of... I don't know. I was thinking like, oh, maybe him and Carr, but now I'm like, no, him and Miss Martian. That'd be so cool. Like I said, it's just that part of me wanting Young Justice to exist in some shape or form. So it's like, as like in my mind, I'll keep pretending you're Superboy to a certain extent. I am very curious to see what does his powers grow to match that of a Kryptonian's, because the fact of the matter is currently he's super strong, he's super fast, but he doesn't have flight like them. I don't know. I mean, he is just kind of waking up here on Earth, so. We don't really know how long it took Kara, like basing on like, the Man of Steel movie, it took Clark a while to kind of learn how to fly. I mean, it wasn't something he just naturally could do. It just eventually he had to try. Same thing for Smallville. It wasn't until much later on in the series. There were points like earlier, like I wasn't the earliest he flew was like season 4, but he was under control at that time. He was kind of tapping into his true Kryptonian self. So, just that's its own thing. But so I'm curious to see, like, will that be something where he kind of develops his powers more and more? That'd just be sick. Just this season's so cool, dude. I'm very interested to see where they go, because it's like we do have that divide like between humans and aliens. I mean, we haven't really seen the human side of that to a big extent, because even Lena's situation is very tame. All she wants to do is make it so that aliens are more, people are aware of who's an alien and who's not. I mean, she's not downright saying like, oh, screw all aliens. I mean, she's being like, oh, welcome here to Earth and everything. We just need to be more prepared, need to know who they are and everything. But still, that's so interesting. And also, do Daxonites have the same vulnerability that I don't know. Like, would it kind of work on the same regards of like Kryptonians are weak to their own planet? Or is it like, would Daxam do the same thing to him that Kryptonite does to a Kryptonian? I'm just curious. But just the fact of the matter is, but the fact is you also have aliens being against it, because some are like, it's like, it's not about being welcomed. You know what that means? That's them knowing our addresses, knowing what our powers are. It's a registry, which, obviously my brain instantly goes, that makes me think of that, I can't help it. My brain automatically goes, kind of similar to, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., just kind of like the whole Inhumans versus human things. It's kind of a similar situation. I'm surprised things never went that far in The Flash. It's never been an outright hate situation when it comes to metahumans. I guess because there are good, you do have heroes like The Flash, so I guess it balances itself out. But you never hear like the love-hate situation. Arrow, you hear a little bit kind of like of vigilantes versus cops doing their job type of situation. It's very different degrees of a similar situation, obviously. I mean, really, it's it's very different dynamics. But just, to me, that was very interesting. Now that I think about it, I don't think that's ever come up before, like, a distaste for metahumans like The Flash. I don't think so. So, this is kind of the first DC show that's kind of pushing that forward. I mean, granted, metahumans are different because it's like, yeah, you have powers and everything, but you're still humans. You're just humans with powers. It's like, these are people from a different planet with powers, so I guess it's a whole other beast when you break it down like that. So I don't know. It's very fascinating. I'm very curious to see where this goes. Like, what other type of aliens will we see and kind of learn about? See where everybody like progresses, where everyone's story goes. It's just an overall, dude, it was just so good. I'm still tripping out about Miss Martian, dude. I can't help it, dude. That was probably my favorite moment of the episode. I can't help it. That was too freaking cool. And now, moving on to this week's episode of Lucifer. So I brought it up last time because I caught a small smidget of the preview. We get introduced to Lucifer's brother, Uriel. First of all, quickly bring up the fact is that whole accident thing with Chloe ended up finding out it's not an accident. I mean, obviously it's not an accident because it's like, oh, you find out the whole situation. It's like, oh, who's to say dad won't kind of ask for, to kind of take back because the fact is you didn't keep up your end of the deal. So I knew that was the case. Did not know that Uriel does some like Final Destination shit. Like, it's like putting that skateboard there, making the mom get pissed, which kind of gets the son pissed, which leaves the door open. The dog comes out, distracts the car, and then, the car kind of has to swerve out of the way, ends up hitting Chloe. I was like, that is some Final Destination shit. Holy crap. Apparently his thing is basically probability and patterns. It's like, he basically makes stuff happen because, as an angel, he can't directly harm humans. But, like Lucifer found a loophole around his deal with God, and Uriel kind of found his, like, loophole around it. What I find very fascinating about it, though, is the fact is when you have the final, like, situation, it's like, yeah, oh, you think I'm here to take mom back to hell? It's like, no, I'm here to kill mom. Because it's like, mom's going to squirm her way back into heaven. And you know what's going to happen? Dad's going to take her back, and it's going to suck, so... Because basically, Uriel just kind of put Lucifer in a situation that's like, so either give me mom or I take Chloe from you. You've got 24 hours. He even brings it up later on and be like, I know that Chloe means more to you. That human means more to you than even mom does. So, side note, because it's in the back of my mind, I have to bring it up. It's just a lot of recognizable actors in this episode. You had, I can't think of his name. I'm familiar with, because I see him in stuff all the time, but the actor who plays Uriel, him, plus you had Charisma Carpenter, Mark DeCoscos. I know I butchered his name. It's just I've never known how to pronounce his name since I first saw him in 1999 with The Crow. Him and Phil Lamar. It's like, dude, like the moment I literally saw their names back to back, like Charisma Carpenter, Mark DeCoscos, and then Phil Lamar. I'm like, dude, what the hell is with that casting? Now there's a problem. I was like, holy shit, you got all those people in this episode? That's so freaking sick. I'll get back to the whole Uriel thing in a second. Basically, the biggest part of this episode is the fact that Lucifer's a little scared for Chloe. He's like, I'm never going to leave your side and everything. They get a new case. It's this, basically he's part of this, movie series, where basically he's kind of an action star. His name's like Wesley Cabot. And essentially, I love the fact that Lucifer was like fanboying all over him. Like, dude, have you not seen his movies? Like, oh man, they're so amazing, especially 1 through 3, because they have ninjas and nudity, which is just, in itself, I gotta admit, that's the perfect combination. You can't go wrong with ninjas and nudity. That's just amazing. Just perfect movie, if you ask me. It's like, you haven't even seen the movie. I don't care. It has ninjas and nudity. What more do you need? Nothing else. Everything else is just icing on the top. I mean, I'll leave it at that. I know this sounds so misogynistic of me and just douchey, but it's like, come on. Ninjas and nudity. Come on. That's awesome. Nevertheless, I love the fact is that he tried to take a picture with the dude's body and clothes. Like, what the hell are you doing? Stop. He's like, what? And also the fact is that him and Dan were fanboying over these movies. That blew my freaking mind, because it's like, holy crap. This is the first time you two agreed on anything, and they're having so much fun, like quoting the movie and everything. And then Chloe just kind of discussed it. It was just like, I liked it better when you hated each other. It's like, I don't like this. They kept doing it the entire episode. And I liked when Mark's character, the Weaponizer, I'm just going to refer to him, I think his real name is like Kimbo or something, but the Weaponizer was trying to jump that guy, and he had the ski mask on and everything. Dude was like, dude, I was about to get mugged by the Weaponizer. That's sick. It's like, and then, I mean, that's a very nice way to handle that. I really like finding out the fact is that he was going to rough him up because basically he takes work from the mob now. It's like people who don't pay their gambling debts or whatever. I thought that was just kind of fascinating. But also Lucifer's reaction being like, okay, tell me what you really want. He's like, my wife's love, essentially. She's like, she's my lighthouse. And then just Lucifer's disgusting. He's like, what happened to you? You're my hero. And he looked like his, like, it's like finding out your favorite hero likes, to kick puppies in her free time. It's just like, he was so heartbroken. It's like, what happened to you? Man up. You were such a cold-blooded, badass in your movies. And it's like, you're all mushy over your wife. It's like, what is that? I also love the fact is that he paid for his bail, and it's like, oh yeah, the judge set his bail to like a high something amount. It's like in the millions, and then Lucifer's like, oh, how? She's like, how? Chloe's like, how did he get out? It's like, oh yeah, I paid his bail. She's like, wait, what? It's like, yeah, there's no way the weaponizer is going to spend 1 day in prison. It's just like, wow, that is awesomeness. But I end up loving. I really like the cases, like, resolution, finding out who the killer is. It's like, oh yeah, Phil Lamar and Charisma Carpenter were behind it. Basically, they were kind of having an affair. It's like, holy crap. Because even Chloe brought it up in episodes like, so you left your ex-husband Wesley, an action star, for another action star, the Weaponizers. And it's like, she's like, oh, basically, like, love is love, And then apparently she's been cheating on him with Phil Lamar, who basically acted as her manager, basically ended up finding out that basically in both Weaponizers and Wesley's contract, basically when it comes to merchandise like toys and stuff, they're supposed to get 10%, but sadly they were only getting 1%, and Wesley ended up finding out about it, and that basically his manager has been scheming him off, and so basically they killed him. I mean, they both kept throwing it around like, oh, she didn't know, you did it. Now, that ended up leading to a very interesting confrontation between, Lucifer shows up in time, and he's, kind of wanting to step in because it's like, oh, the whole Uriel situation. But Chloe kind of admitted something she hadn't admitted. It's the fact that she's like, I'm scared. The whole accident, like, shook me a lot more than I was willing to admit. Everyone's asking me if I'm okay, and I'm saying I am, but I'm not, because it just put things in perspective, being like, life can be over just like that. It made it too real that, life can be over in a flash. And that ended up getting him to calm down, because he was about to kill his wife and his manager, so she's like trying to keep him from making a mistake. But, it also meant like you making a decision also means I get to go home to my little girl, get to read her a bedtime story. So that was very sweet and beautiful. I love how like that came, like, so many good moments in this episode. I'm trying to remember them all. For one, the whole Ella situation where just like Lucifer is just like, I got a family situation I got to deal with. And then she's like, okay, I guess I'll go by myself. And then Ella's just mumbled, she's like, just go ahead, get a room, why don't you? And then Dan happened to be in the room, was like, what'd you say? And she's like, oh, too soon? And he just kind of looks there. She's like, so, what's going on with the case? Trying to dodge that really quickly. I love the fact that she still thinks that, God, I love Amy Garcia so much. I'm so glad that she's part of this show. I don't know, just because it's so cool seeing her in this. I haven't brought it up before because it's just the whole Rush Hour situation. I was so happy to see her in that, and now seeing her in this. Now that I think about it, she's literally done like 3 crime dramas back to back, hasn't she? Because she was in Dexter, and then she went to the, I don't know if that was the next thing she did, but it's the next thing that I'm aware of that she did, and that was Rush Hour, and now this. So I thought that's kind of interesting. Granted, she's not a different person in each situation, because in Dexter she was just a babysitter. In Rush Hour she was a detective. In this one she's kind of an ME. Kind of forensic person, so that was kind of cool. I don't know. Nevertheless, I love her. She's an interesting addition to the series, especially because she's like, brings different perspectives to things. It's kind of like the fact that she thinks Lucifer's a method actor. She's like, oh yeah, you're a Lucifer, and you're such a good method. It's like, I'm not a method actor. That's exactly what a method actor was saying. Just like, I give up. It's like, what's the point of talking anymore? And also, the fact is that it's like, oh, you're moving in with Maze, Lucifer saying as being like, do you really, like, you two won't get along, you're so opposite and whatnot. Start picking all the sex toys Maze has around and just like, oh, what is this? And it's like, I can only assume those are anal beads, and you're just picking them up. It's like, that's okay. Cuffs everywhere and everything. And then the whole situation with referring to Trixie as like a birth control, and she's like kind of yelling at Chloe to read her a book now before she goes to work, and he's like, oh, that's birth control. That's an example. That's birth control right there. An example of a good reason for birth control. And then, ends up talking about, you end up understanding why she was like that, because she was worried. She heard about an accident. She was worried about her mom, and it's just like, cops get hurt a lot, and she didn't want that happen to her mom. It's a very sweet and touching moment. They hug and everything. He's like, okay, that's a better example of birth control. Just like, oh, just no, it's just disgusting. But that's with the case and everything. The main overall thing in this episode was just kind of like Uriel giving that decision to Lucifer, and Lucifer being unwilling to compromise in that situation. Maze is like, don't be stupid. Also because, she ultimately likes Chloe. She really doesn't care that much about Lucifer's mom. She's just like, just turn her over. But he's like, no, I'm not going to do that. He's like, basically, you're an angel, Amenadal. Go talk to him and everything, which Amenadal is kind of hesitant to. He ended up talking to their mom, and she's kind of like, he brings up, he never actually tells her that Uriel's here, and brings up the fact that it's like, that there's a chance that your other children will come here, and they might not be as accepting as me as Lucifer. It's like, she's basically like, how did you think this is going to end? Eventually, you're going back to hell. It's like, but, why avoid the inevitable? Because it is going to happen. And she's basically like, you don't know your children that well. You've been going a very long time. Your children aren't the same people that you knew them as. And she's like, but maybe I'll be able to convince them like I was able to you and Lucifer. And kind of sweet talks him in a doll to a certain extent, being like, saying the right things, being like, even if I have to even if it's 2 years or even 2 hours, as long as I get to spend that time with you, I'm happy. And it's just, you see Amenadal getting swept up, and you see Lucifer getting swept up by it, and it's like, I don't buy that for a second. I'll get to it a little bit, but it's just like I said, I can't get past the smirks, and like, you can obviously see she's got some grander plan, because Uriel kind of brought it up, the fact is of going back to heaven. Is it about getting back what she lost, that power in that position? Because she's kind of been left with nothing now. So I'm getting the feeling she's trying to get Amenadal and Lucifer on her side so she can get everything back. Trying to like kind of weasel her, quote unquote, weasel her way back into heaven so that she can just take back the power, take control of everything. She'd be the new one to kind of decide things, which could be good and bad, because it's like, as we know, she's not the biggest fan of humans. So, especially because the fact of the matter is she was trying to put her, trying to be Charlotte and put her child and tie him out and chained him up somewhere. And it's like, oh yeah, this is her version of punishment. Luckily, Mace was able to shut that down pretty quickly by just like growling at him, showing just how much of a badass she is. But then basically Lucifer brought up the fact is like, okay, Amenadal's like, okay, hide mom, hide Chloe, eventually Uriel will go away. But then Lucifer talked to him, it's like, you're the big bad brother. You're the first, you're the eldest. Everyone fears you, everyone respects you. I don't want to admit it, when you weren't being a complete another douchebag, you were kind of like the cool big brother that everyone kind of aspired to be like. And he's like, really? Just like, and he goes, the fact of the matter is you just being there will be enough to kind of make Uriel shit his pants. And he's like, really? Yeah, because I am very imposing. I am the big brother. I am probably the strongest. And he's just like, there you go. There goes that ego of yours. Amenadal tries his thing, tries to be very confrontational, tries to be upfront, be like, tries to play tough. And then Uriel proceeds to beat the shit out of him because it's like, yo, you've always been top dog. But the fact of the matter is you've never talked this much, so that's how I knew something was different. Normally, you act first. If you got power, you flaunt it. You don't really just hide behind your words. But the fact is you're talking so much means something different. So basically, you're just beat the crap out of him. It's just like, he's always had to be lower than not just Amenadal to a lot of them. Kind of fell in, like, even I think, was it Lucifer or was it Amenadal that kind of was like, oh, you were always the middle child? I think it was Amenadal. Like, he said some pretty hurtful crap. Like, I'm at the top, and then you have, like me, the one that's most trusted by God. I'm the one he sends to do what he needs done. You're not even the rebellious young son. You're just someone pathetically caught up in the middle. And it's like, whew, that's some pretty harsh stuff to say. So, after he whoops his ass, it finally comes out, I mean, I was like, I've lost my powers. It's like, it could be for a multitude of reasons. I've done a lot of shady crap. So it's like, it could be anything. And then, Lucifer's like, you know what? I'm going to go off and I'm going to fix your crap. All this, clean up your mess. And he's like, my mess? Because Lucifer being him, he can never admit stuff is his own fault. But I think it did seem like that did piss him off to a certain extent, seeing Amenadal like that, like seeing his brother in that position, because he'd always thought of his brother as big and powerful, and as see his brother beaten down like that, it just puts a different perspective in his mind, because he's like, I've fallen, Lucifer, and he's like, okay, yeah, that's a good thing, you never, you should be glad, it's probably the best thing that's ever happened to you. He's like, it's not the same, you fell, but you can still have your powers. I've lost everything. But then Lucifer's like, yo, I don't have time to sit here and babysit you. I've got to go, look out for Chloe. So it does make you wonder, why is it different? Why is he losing his powers? Is it because of that? Or is there something else at play here? Maybe someone else is siphoning away his powers, because his powers didn't start really disappearing until his mom popped up in the scene. So it's kind of like, maybe that's the case. I mean, he started losing them before they actually met up with her, but she was here on Earth already, so maybe she's secretly sucking away his powers and he doesn't even know it. It just doesn't seem like it. Maybe it's because, if you want to get all existential about it, he doesn't know where he belongs. It's like he came here to complete a mission and he's not done neither. He hasn't taken Lucifer back to hell. He hasn't taken his mother back to hell. It's just, he's in this situation and, trying to decide what he wants. He'd always been the loyal son doing whatever he was told. He was the chosen one to follow God's orders, which in itself leads to an interesting thing in this episode where Lucifer's like, Maze is like, yo, here's your mom, hand her over because I like Chloe, and so like everything can get back to normal, we can protect Chloe. But he's like, I'm not going to do that. Like, we're all following his orders. We don't know what the damn game plan is. Like, Dad's never been open about what he wants. It's like, oh, does he want me to take Mom back to hell, or does he really, or is it this whole some like ploy to point out the fact is that, oh, hell is running dry or something like that? I don't know. He's like trying to figure out what the whole point is. He even brings up Uriel. It's like, you don't know what Dad wants. And I kind of going back to it, it's like, well, yeah, Dad, he's not there because of God. He's there for himself. Which, just the whole thing, Lucifer not liking the fact is that he's willing to threaten Chloe, doesn't appreciate that, and starts going, ends up in a very interesting fight, seeing him kind of slug it out. And you kind of see a little bit more of Uriel's power, to the point, after a while, he's like, I got your patterns down, and starts predicting Lucifer's moves. Mazakin shows up, kicks his ass a little bit, but then she fights him, and same thing happens. And then he's like, you know what I'm going to do? The fact of the matter is, I'm just going to kill, end up killing them both, essentially. Because he was going to say, I pressed this one key, 2 days from now, something, long line of events end up leading to Chloe ended up being killed. I mean, because that's how the whole, weaponizer situation happened. He set everything in motion so he could make sure that weaponizer saw his wife and manager making out. So, another situation of trying to kill Chloe. The whole thing ended with Lucifer sadly killing him. It was the only way to stop him. And then he ended up telling Lucifer, he's like, I didn't see that coming. So it's kind of like, because Chloe herself is a bit of an anomaly herself, because the fact is of what she can do to Lucifer. That shows you she ain't no normal human. So it makes you wonder what was the chances of her coming out of that situation all right. But I mean, he argues it's like, yo, that was me holding my punches. Eventually I'm gonna let loose, and it's going in very sadly poorly for her. And apparently he told Lucifer something before he died, but Lucifer's like, I don't get it. And we see him coming back to his mom. He's covered in his brother's blood. He's like, you see him shaking. You've never seen Lucifer that shaken, because it's like he killed one of his brothers. Might have been at odds or whatever. Him and Aminadal had punching matches, but it's still he, the fact that he killed his brother, and it's like he's shaking and crying, dude. It's like, because he can't believe what he did. Being me, because I don't trust their mom. I really don't trust her. I was halfway expecting her to kind of we see her holding Lucifer, and then we see the camera pan to her face and we see her smiling. But the fact of the matter is, she loves her children. When she never actually got to have a chance to actually sit down and talk to Uriel, I would have been interested to see where that went, but it didn't play out that way. But the fact is that we didn't get to see that side of her. I think it is that she is legitimately sad, because no matter what her scheme is, I think it is legitimately about getting her sons back, and she wants, like I said, I don't think it is about controlling them or anything. It has to be about getting back what she lost, and she wants her sons by her side. That's why she's trying to get everyone on her side, to have an army beside her to help her, to defend her, to be her shield, to be her sword as she goes to claim whatever it is that she's trying, whether it is power or whatever it is she's aiming for. So, a very good episode. I'm very curious to see where everything plays out, because it's like, what happens to Lucifer now? Once again, caught a little bit of previews, and it seems like he's a wreck from the little bit I saw, 1 second, like I did last week. But it seems like he's in a wreck. I mean, it's like he's never been in a situation like this. You part of you would think it's like, oh, it's Lucifer. Obviously, he's shaken off or whatever. He has his problems with his family, but he still loves them. It's a very dysfunctional and complicated family, and he never wanted things to go that route, but he felt like it was the only way because he's kind of swept up with his mom, but he also cares about Chloe, and he's not about to let anyone hurt her. So, very good episode. Very curious to see where everything goes from here. I also see where Chloe goes from here. You know, this whole accident does have her a little shaken, so I'm curious if that's going to be something we kind of see carrying over for our next couple episodes or not. So, and, I mean, how is Amenadiel going to feel knowing that Lucifer killed Uriel? It's like, the fact is, he did a big no-no. Not only did he kill an angel, I mean, the fact is, it's an angel that's your brother. You killed your brother. Like, things are going to go bad for you. You didn't turn in mom, and God doesn't have Chloe's soul. You know, I mean, granted, that whole situation was Uriel's plan, so we still don't know where God sits on the whole situation, but it's like, you committed a crime, you killed one of us, so it's kind of like, what's that going to mean? And what is Amenadiel going to do, like, with that information? I mean, it's not like he can go up against Lucifer anyway. Makes you want, because Mace is kind of like, he was a douchebag, he deserved it, so, but, you know, like I said, Lucifer's shaken by it. I'm just curious to see how this will affect him in the next episode, because obviously it is. It's going to play a big part from, like I said, the tiny bit I saw, so. Like I said, good episode, and I cannot wait to see where we go from here. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.